Welcome back again for another episode of Louisiana Catalyst Podcast, The Link. We're excited to be here again. I'm Duran Talley, Vice President of Louisiana Catalyst, here with my brother, my good friend, our president, Mr. Quentin Durr.
Good morning. Good morning.
And we have a human resource guru, Director of Human Resources, wears many hats in this community in terms of volunteerism, service, leadership, the whole nine, and then just being a good friend and a good man here in the community, Mr. Lamont Windom.
Good morning. Thank you. I love that introduction.
Right.
You know, that's one of the things that I try and do in each episode is make sure our guests understand the value, the validity of of the information we bring to them through you guys. I mean, you guys, so far the folks that we brought in have been phenomenal in the respective industry, respective career paths, and just leadership in the community. And so a lot of times I believe that the community doesn't understand the jewels that we have in terms of leadership, in terms of who's really turning the wheel behind a lot of the things that we see in this community. So I think a big part of what we have to do here at Catalyst is also to bring light to that as well.
Absolutely. And also, as a moment to say thank you for being on the board of Louisiana Catalyst.
No
because
problem.
your experience and direction helps us do what we do, but also when we have companies that may have a need or are just unsure about some things, you're a great resource to be able to bring in and help shine some light on some issues I think everyone's afraid of.
Yes.
Because I'm definitely afraid of interviews. I remember I had to hire the president for the Union Parish Chamber of Commerce,
right.
And I brought in our HR department because I was like, I'm not equipped.
So that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about meeting people who have those resources and not necessarily doing it for the companies or for the individual, but coaching them on what to do and what not to do. So I think that's what it's all about. That's why you have a community like we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lamont, Louisiana Tech Bulldog. Also,
Yes,
Quentin Durr,
graduate.
Quentin Durr, Louisiana Tech Bulldog. That's why I made sure to wear my Warhawk gear today, just in case.
It's also why we're going to blur that out.
Right.
It's Bulldog Day.
Yes.
We got Rick over there holding it down, another, rest tonight. So.
Yeah, you just surrounded by bulldogs. It's okay. It's okay.
But I wanted to ask because a lot of you in human resources, and
yes.
we looked at workforce in some of our other conversations. When you look at this, where we are, this region, Northeast Louisiana, and you have Louisiana Tech, you have ULM, you also have Grambling.
Yes.
I don't want to leave Grambling out, still right there down I-20, Louisiana Delta Community College, and the many campuses that it has throughout the region. How are these institutions, from your perspective, in hiring and interviewing and just meeting younger professionals coming out? What are you seeing in terms of the institutions developing our workforce?
So workforce is a sensitive topic today. It's a problem that every company is going through. There's a shortage in labor. We have more jobs than we do labor now. And so that's part of our problem in this community as well. This is a global problem. But, with Northeast Louisiana, as you mentioned, we got 3 major universities within 30 miles of I-20. Louisiana Delta, we have McCann. We have different schools and talent here that come to learn here. This has been a problem for years. We bring the talent in, we educate them, and then they leave. And so now we're seeing that they're still being educated here, and they're still not willing to work here. And so a lot of companies are in a panic right now because we are producing a lot of services. We are providing a lot of product, but we don't necessarily have the talent to do it. So to answer your question, now workforce is forced to look at internal. What do they have to offer that the bigger cities are not offering? Our local governments, our community leaders are now looking at quality of life in this area. What would attract the young professionals to remain here? The 3 of us are at an age where, we are developing families. Some of us are even taking care of our parents. And so flexibility is huge, when it comes down to working. So our employers are forced to look at different aspects. And if you're an employee, if you're not looking at those aspects, you probably should. Because if you want that talent, if you want that, what they call that city life, New Yorker with that think mentality and bring new ideas, you have to think about what is important to them and what attracts them to come to work. Because like right now with the pandemic, what the pandemic taught a lot of workforce, and I know I'm easing into another topic, but we are taught to, all jobs do not have to come into the office. All jobs you're not doing an 8-hour work day anymore. So, and it's okay to have those conversations and be like, okay, let's create that flexibility, and let's continue to work from home so it may be more convenient for the employee. It'll definitely pick up production, but you also have to assess, like, is that the position that you can do it? We have essential jobs that you just can't do it. You have to be wherever your work is.
Right.
But you do have certain jobs like finance, administrative jobs that you can work from anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that came to mind as you were talking, a couple of things. The first thing, as it pertains to my initial question was, for years it's always been, we have all this talent, the schools are training them, but we don't have the jobs. And what came to mind was, okay, now we have this talent still being pumped out, graduation classes every year, feel like every year, every spring, ULM, this is the largest graduating class. This is the largest graduating class. So all these students are still being developed. Young professionals are coming out, being pumped out. But now we see jobs or employers saying, we don't have people to fill the spots that we have.
Yes.
Is it because what our young professionals are graduating in aren't matching the needs? And if so, what type of conversation needs to be had between employers, the business communities, and these institutions in terms of what the type of alignment we need?
So, very good question, and that's part of it. It's definitely not number one, but it's definitely part of it. And so that was the issue before the pandemic, right? So number one is developing relationships with ULM, Tech, Grambling, Delta, McCann, and different trade schools, actually having a conversation on, this is our industry, this is what we do, and these are the services that we need. Now, certain HR recruiters will, have those conversations with institutions as well, where they'll meet with the students and say, oh, your major is accounting. So my company has an accounting department, and actually having that conversation. Now, going on where you're leading to is you have certain majors that our institutions may provide, but that industry may not be here, like mass communication. That is not a huge demand in this area, right? So a lot of graduates like yourself are forced to get in where you can fit in, and hopefully grow within that company, and then eventually most of them, they start their own business like you did. So it's having those conversations that it's different options. Used to work for ULM, and some of the conversation I had with the students there are, with this major, you can do X, Y, and Z. You can do it here. And then I have to have a conversation where, okay, that's not a high demand in this area. So you may have to go to New York. You may have to go to California. You may have to go to Texas. So it's having that candid conversation about what it is that you're wanting to do. My mentor in college had that conversation with me, when I was in college. Asked me the question, what do you want to do? And like a lot of our answers, I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm employed after I graduate. But he was like, okay, you're in a broad field where you can just go anywhere. At the time, I was working in the bank. I was in the banking industry. And so I thought I was going to grow there, but that's probably wasn't my niche, and it wasn't.
Right.
You know, and so it's also having a conversation on what is it that you're wanting to do. What is your niche? And a lot of college students don't know what their niche is. Mm-hmm. We're still young. We're still learning ourselves.
Right.
But it's having the conversation. You at least have the thought process there where you understand what you're passionate about and what you'll be successful in. So it's having a conversation. It's developing relationships with these education institutions, and actually getting out in the community and developing other relationships, because your talent is not necessarily in the education field, and your talent may not be at ULM, Tech, Grambling, or any other educational institutions. So it's developing those relationships, and as you mentioned earlier, we have gems here. We have talent that we have not even meet yet, you know, that's in the community, and a lot of times they don't know that there's opportunities out there because we're looking at one spot. So it's forcing us as a community to think outside the box and actually go above and beyond what we've been doing over the past few years, and developing more relationships where we would not have developed those relationships in the past.
Yeah, I think the relationship aspect is huge, because even as a student, while you may have a degree, you may have a certain set of skills that can apply to another, set of employment or something like that. And unless you get out and start meeting people and have conversations, you'll really never know that a bank may have a marketing department.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or some other skill set that applies to a totally different industry, that there's the opportunity. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard a lot of graduates in this area graduate kinesiology and psychology. I don't know of jobs in our area that really support that without having to now go to a master's or doctorate.
Correct. Yes.
You know, so they get out and they think, I'm going to go get a job. And it's like, what skill sets do you have? And they have none. So it's like being in school, knowing that not only are you getting an education, but you also have to develop your skill set at the same time.
Yes.
And try to put it in some type of direction towards a job. We had conversations with a ULM professor last week, me and Roy, and I think students were taught to just go get a degree instead of find a job or a field and then decide what type of education it gets there. At least you'd have more direction than getting out and go, I graduated, now what?
Well, that's what we were all told.
Yeah.
You know, we were all told to go to school, get an education.
Get that paper, baby.
Right. Just graduate.
Right.
You know, that's what the older generation, mostly Generation X, and baby boomers were telling us.
Right.
You know, because during their time, having a bachelor's degree, you somebody. You doors will open for you. Times have changed now.
It was a big lie.
It was.
I graduated. I got out, and I thought, man, I got a bachelor's in management and entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I'm gonna go make $60,000-$70,000 a year.
Yes.
4 months later, I end up going to work at a payday company making $12 an hour.
Right. Right.
Like, that was a hard pill to swallow. While meanwhile, the student loan had a grace period.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
I'm thinking, I got debt now, this job, and I'm like, I was making $10 an hour at Johnny's Pizza before.
Right.
Right.
That, you know, this
Right.
$2, you know.
Yeah.
But, of course, God had a play in my life and put me in a position to start at the bank, which allowed my skill set, which was people, and I had that entrepreneurship, so I understood business, business lending.
Yes.
But that whole skill set, I never wanted to go into banking because I hate counting.
Yes.
Hate counting.
Yes.
You know, so it was a God thing to steer me in the right opportunity, but without that, no one told me coming out I was going to make $12 an hour.
So now we're in a position where we know what the struggle is. We know the truth.
Right.
So we need to start passing that
That's right.
down
Yeah.
to so when we meet, I say start in high school. Because that's when you start the conversation. Because just telling kids to go to school okay, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of me going to school and getting this degree? For that child, that person may not need a degree to do what they need to do, and so you're saving time, you're saving money, and then it's just giving them the right resource and the right pathway. But I think in the past, like I said, we were all told to go to school, get an education. That will create opportunities for you. You'll make money. But the three of us, realize that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
My mentor, Adam Collins at Louisiana Tech, plug, he told me the hard truth when I was in school. A degree, no matter how many you have, because I have two, does not guarantee anything. You still have to be the obvious choice. And I think the both of you have heard me say this many, many times because, and when I say what I said many, many times is being the obvious choice. I've applied that in everything that I do because it really stuck with me. Being the obvious choice, that doesn't mean having the most degrees, having the higher education. That means developing the skill set where an employer have no choice but to say yes to you.
Right.
And you're developing yourself for your career. He also taught me to take charge of my own career. Let's scout yourself and look at the options out there and see what's best for you. So
Yeah, Lamont, I remember several years ago when you first gave me that line, "Be the obvious choice." Man, I was blown away, and I've shared that with so many other young professionals, and even people. Talking to a guy the other day, was looking potentially at moving his career. Hadn't dusted his resume off in 12 years. First thing I told him was, make sure you're the obvious choice. Really think through your last 12 years from the last time you dust off your resume.
Yes.
So that you're the obvious choice wherever you go. It's when you get in the room, you're gonna do what you're supposed to do. But that resume also has to say you're the obvious choice. And
Right.
I always think about you and the things that you shared from that perspective, from a hiring manager perspective, and what you guys look for, because it's so true. And then I'm gonna go back to what Quentin was talking about. When we come out of school with our bachelor degree and can't get a job, and you get a job and it's a couple bucks an hour, and then you got to get that paper. And then you got family members, cousins, brothers working offshore, making $1,000 a week.
Right.
Yes.
And you're like, man, now,
Yeah.
I went and got the paper.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a couple
Yeah.
bucks an hour.
Yeah.
These guys, hey, and we understand that industry and that skill set and all that, but their value is in their skill set. They were
Yes.
able to develop a trade.
Yes.
And we were taught, some of us were taught, that if you don't want to be blue collar, you want to. No, it's not about being blue collar or white collar. It's about finding a skill set. It's about identifying your passion, your purpose. Because no matter what room you walk into, whether it's in an office with AC or outside in the elements, you got to have a skill set to survive in the workforce.
So you brought up an interesting point, and I think as people, as a society, we turn our nose up on blue collar work, and that's part of the problem why we're in this inflation deal. We have told these tales that white collar is better than blue collars, but we need every industry, every job, every role to make the economy work.
That's right.
And so telling kids that, you have to do this because that's what drives success. That will make you successful. For some, yes, but not all. And so I think we need to really change the narrative when we have these discussions about blue collar and white collar. We even seeing that internally. Where certain jobs are looked at as less valued as the other job. Mostly sitting down in front of a desk is more valuable than let's say a custodian or if they're laborers outside. Those jobs are just as important. And so I think we need to really change the narrative of that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take it a step further, because even when we think about jobs such as your fast food restaurants and
Yes.
so on,
Yes.
we only think about that person that we hear in the drive-through window. We only think about that person that's taking our order. But that's where they start.
Yeah.
Right.
If a person goes in there and have the skill set to flip that burger well, to take that cash register well, to open up and close on time, in 5 to 7 years, they could have their own franchise.
Right.
If we, as leaders in the business community, parents, role models, mentors, position that at 18, you're going to college, that's great. But it's okay to start at McDonald's, Chick-fil-A,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But understand that you're there to develop a skill set.
Yes.
And if your skill set starts to match your academic credential, by the time you graduate college, you could be owning your first franchise.
And I don't think kids, students, well, even adults,
Yeah.
really hear the story of where we started out. You know, the three of us graduated and started out making $11, $12 an hour. And it took developing our skills, developing ourselves professionally to get to the roles that we have now. And I think that's very important. I think social media has played a trick on us. You know, we're posting these pictures and making these posts about, I'm making 6 figures. I'm vacationing, you know, in Europe or wherever the case may be. But we're not seeing the struggle behind, you know, I started my own business, but we're not seeing the struggle and the work that it takes in the background to get it to this point. So again, it's changing the narrative and having those candid conversations. I get teased a lot from people about, you know, just speak positive. Well, I mean, it has nothing to do with positive or negative. It's actually having a realistic, you know, conversation, you know, that, you know, this positive outcome came out of work in the background that is not as popular to see and not popular to talk about. So we don't post those. We don't talk about those.
No.
But it does take work to get all of this, you know, going.
Yeah, I think a lot of that gets left out.
Yes.
That's not sexy. You don't want to talk about, you know, like everybody wants to own rental property until you get the call that the kitchen floor fell in.
Yeah.
And now you've got a $5,500 bill to replace the floor.
Yes.
You know, and that just ate up your whole profit for the year.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to talk about that. We
Right.
just want to say, well, yeah, you know, I got 12 rental properties or some number, you know.
Right.
And it's just like owning your own business. We know the struggle.
Yes.
You know, you get that one vacation week, but you're not going to get to see the 24 weeks it took to get to that 1 week off.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? And how many times you have to eat something because of some situation, so you take the lick because of you know, from a reputation standpoint, like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and just take this loss because in the long run, it'll benefit me just by just moving forward and being the bigger person in a scenario. There's so many different things that, you know, that doesn't get highlighted, you know, which is a lot of reason I think me and Duran, at least, I know, and I don't think any of us real big social media people personally, even though we make a living from social media marketing. You know, it's like I'm on there so much. I'm like, I don't want to put anything. Like I might put a random picture.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Right.
that's about it. Because it's like, you know, nah, I don't want to share my life.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Because it can get misconstrued. You know what I mean? Like it, you know, it's just it can be a false narrative, and you know, I'd rather just know the
keep
truth.
in mind, this is what the children, you know, the generation under us are looking at.
Right.
They're looking at social media. They're watching these reality shows, and you know, and they're saying, you know, I can do it, which is great. We want you to do it, but there's work behind that. You know, just this morning, Duran was drilling holes, you know, hanging up something. You on the wall. You're doing the work, and this is the product.
Right.
We're sitting here, and so I think those conversations need to be had.
Right.
You know, the younger generation needs to understand the background work, and that goes back to what I said about blue collar. Y'all were just doing blue collar work before I walked in, and so it's value in that work because it produces and make all of this happen.
Right.
So again, I think we're doing a disservice by not having those conversations.
I agree. It comes down to value. And if people don't understand, like, you get paid what you're worth.
Yes.
So you have to be very honest with yourself and say, okay, what am I worth? What's my value? If you don't provide a skill set and create value to a company, then your pay is going to be low.
Right.
Even at fast food, right? If it takes 2 people to work the grill, you're going to make half of what you should. But if you can work that grill by yourself, then that employer should recognize, hey, I don't have to spend it on 2 people, so I can bump his pay up because he's handling more work.
Right.
You know, and you see a lot of people just come out and I graduated, I should make $100,000. It's like, well, what can you do? Well, I graduated. You know, it's like that's nice, but what can you do for a company that's going to generate dollars?
That's right.
Or save dollars. You got to make money or save money. In essence, you know, all the roles we play with our employees, we're either producers or we're savers. You know, I mean,
Yes.
even HR. I mean, you are providing services, picking the right people that affects efficiency, to managing people, which affects efficiency, which saves money. So you can always tie it back to making money or saving money. So you got to ask yourself when you're looking for a job. And I always say this: find a job you think you want, and then go pull that job description, and then match that up to your resume. If you don't check all the boxes, you still got some more work to do.
Right.
You know, and that what discourages a lot of people, but they got to realize this is part of the work and the experience. It may say 5 to 10 years worth of experience. Well, guess what? You're not going to get that job for another 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Because you got to get the experience, because when you're put in that position, you have to make decisions that could cost that company hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. You know, if I sign one cashier's check wrong, I can cost the bank a lot of money.
Exactly.
You know, so that responsibility comes along with that.
Well, that goes to that's another conversation about college students. I know all of us have heard it before, and we probably said it ourselves. Well, how do we get the experience if I spent 4 years in college? How am I supposed to get that experience? And so that is a legitimate question to ask, because if you have the education background and you have some of the skill set, but not all because your age or if you were in school, how do I get the skill set? So my answer to that and my response to that would be, for me, I didn't get an HR right away after I graduated. I didn't even think I was going to get an HR, to be honest with you, because with all the HR jobs, back when, 10 years ago, I'm showing my age, 10 years ago when I graduated, and that was the talk, you wanted to be in HR because that was a powerful position, so I was told. And, but you had to have years of experience, because once you get in HR, they don't typically get out. That was the myth back then. And so I had counted HR out. So again, I was working in the bank. I was working for Chase when I graduated from college, and then moved over to Chase Mortgage, doing the background work for Chase. And it was utilizing my position, my role, of doing some HR duties. My AVP, which is Assistant Vice President at the time, she's now the site manager for Chase, Tanya Hilburn. And she executed a peer leadership council, and she selected me to be a part of that. So a lot of my HR duties came from that council. Wow. I didn't get paid extra for doing that, right, yeah. But I developed those skills. So I utilized the position that I had to develop those skills that would get me in the door to an HR role, right. Which was with the city of Monroe at the time. And so you utilize the position that you're in, and you do what my grandma used to say, you use the resources and that that you can develop in to get ready for the next role.
That's right. That's right. Lamont, I want to ask you this, shifting gears a little bit, but kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, because that'll help us at Catalyst as we frame some conversations with some other leaders in the community. What are some of the things you're saying or have said to bring in talent from out of town in the leadership capacity in terms of negotiating or hiring people? What are some of the things that you're saying, this is why this community, this company, et cetera?
Good question. So, as employers, we have to, just like candidates, I look at it in the best way I can make people relate. It's you're dating. Think about your dating life, especially now. It's complicated, you know. So both parties have to really assess themselves, you know, and this relationship that we're seeking to have, what will it take for both parties to make it happen, to make it work? And what will be the ultimate goal, whether it's marriage, long term, dating, or friendship? Those are the conversations that you'll have in your dating life. So when you are seeking employment, or if you're seeking candidates, you have to think about that, because those are relationships that you're developing. So as employers, you want the best talent, but the best talent comes with, number one, money, you know, because you're not just thinking about the value of the position, you also have to think about the value of the person.
Right.
So, and what skills that they're bringing to the table. So that's number one, salary. And this time, now I'm challenging employers to think about flexibility. Because again, pandemic has taught us that some duties can be remote. And in this time, we're seeing a great resignation. People are quitting their jobs. People are doing consultant work instead of holding a position because they need that flexibility. Not because they want it, because they need it. That's a difference.
Right.
You know, again, you have, in our age group, we have children. In some cases, like myself, you have elderly parents, grandparents, who needs our attention. So flexibility is a need now, and that holds just as much value as the salary does. You have some companies that give unlimited sick time. Some, depending on the position, have unlimited vacation time. Those are conversations that I have to have with some companies, only because if we want that talent to come here, or if we want that talent to stay here, we have to assess what that person may need. And so when we're talking about salary, you know, finance, your CFO or whoever case may be a little upset, you know, because their job is to, you know, save money, and that's their job. That's their job. So so when you have those conversations, like, okay, what can we do? What's the room? What's the range? You know, HR may have a salary range, but my salary range is coming from a market analysis. What do your company have for that position? You know, so when I'm making an offer and a candidate come back and say, okay, so I'm going to do a counter offer, and they give me the counter offer, you know, I look at it, and so I confer with finance, I confer with my employer, and see what we can do, you know. And so it's up to the manager, not me, not finance, but to the manager to say, is it worth it or not? And so if it's worth it, then your job as the manager is to work with HR and management, finance, to make sure that it happens, to make sure that it works. And trusting trusting them to make it work. So it's having those conversations now where we're being more creative and innovative when it comes down to our benefits. I'm seeing now that candidates are now looking for mental health.
Glad you touched on. Well,
Yeah,
I was fixing to go there here in a second, 'cause that's
think about it. Generation Z, they have seen a war. They lived through a pandemic. Now they're seeing a recession. They stress. They're going through. They're seeing and going through things that we have not gone through. Generation X have not gone through. Where baby boomers have not gone through. So when they're selecting a job and when they decide to work, these are the things where, they want money, but for some, they need that extra benefit. Like, okay, will this benefit help with my counseling? I'm also seeing, some candidates are asking for executive coaching, where they have a executive coach to help them navigate through their career.
right.
So I'm seeing more companies be more flexible with that. So these are things that I'm having to have that conversation, because being the obvious choice does not necessarily mean for the candidate, right? We have to, if you want more people to come to your business to work and work for you, and the thing is, you have to have them believe in you. If you have candidates who believe in you and believe in what you're doing, then they're most likely to go above and beyond for you. But you have to be the obvious choice for them too. So what are you offering? What are you bringing to the table? It takes two.
Yeah, we had Jay on here, Mulhern with Express, and we
Yes.
talked about the
Love
great
Jay.
right. He's got his hand on the pulse there with workforce development, right?
Right.
And so we were talking about the Great Resignation, but we also, we had with the LSBDC, we had that conference back in December, and I talked about the great battle for talent in 2022. Now we're starting to see it, and it's all these things you're talking about, and I think it's Monroe area, I guess North Louisiana, maybe a little slow to the game.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I'll give you an example. It really hit me like, okay, we're catching on. Is Origin Act. So our CEO just sent out an email Friday that our minimum wage is being moved to $17 an hour.
Wow.
In mid-year raises across the board, and then additional 2 days PTO to everybody. So when you start off at Origin, you're at 17 an hour. I believe now it's 18 days paid time off. Which is pretty good for.
Oh yeah.
I mean, entry level. You're starting
Yeah.
off with three weeks and 3 days worth of vacation, but 17 an hour, and it's because you're seeing a battle for talent.
Yes.
And so now I think it's fixing to, which is going to hurt. We talk with like Etheridge, which also means that sometimes now you're having to pay for people who may not be as valuable as what you're having to pay them just because you got to fill a spot. But it just goes back to, if you're working for someone, what value do you bring, and how can you continue to be valuable?
Right.
And then those negotiations make it a lot easier, because now it's easier when you know your value.
Yes.
That's when it becomes a good negotiation point.
Absolutely. Yes. So, you see these battles. Even federally. In government, you seeing a lot of battle with what is it? Even with some laws being changed. Labor laws being changed to make sure that that small businesses or companies are getting the people that they need, and not only the people but the skill set. Now the issue, I won't say it's an issue, it's actually a good thing, but it creates a challenge. As you mentioned, Quentin, people are understanding their worth. They know their value. So they may not want to, just like in a dating life, they may not want to be tied down to one company. So they're creating their own businesses now by consulting,
Right.
and going with different companies doing certain work where they can do it from home. And so if you want that person in-house, again, what makes you the obvious choice?
Right. What's it worth?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and you see a lot. I think we talked about so many factors that from more jobs than people, correct? Where's the workforce go?
Yes.
And then how many left the workforce to start their own business?
Right.
And then how many, like say, just step back and say, I don't want to commit to just one. I'm just going to consult in my industry to multiple companies.
Right.
And now that's being more acceptable.
Yeah.
Because the company's looking and going, I don't have to give this person benefits.
Right.
Right.
I actually pay less, but I still get what I need when I need.
Right.
So, but it goes back, like I say, to negotiating and.
Right. So, I mean, that may work, but what we're seeing in the news, what we're seeing locally is a lot of companies, these jobs that we talked about, that's maybe labor, these essential jobs, they're not being filled. So what will it take to get these positions filled? And you don't want to make that mistake of just putting somebody in a seat, that probably don't need to be there. Not that they're bad people, but by putting someone in a seat, you're setting them up for failure.
Right.
So it's actually having those conversations and thinking, again, more creative and innovative. Now, it gives HR a headache because, even for myself, this pandemic has had forced me to change my mindset. A lot of the trainings that I had in college, the experience that I went through in HR, so today it's not looking like it was. Now, during the interview process, some of these companies are advocating for you to come work for them in the interview process. It's the other way around now, for some candidates. Generation Z got it easy. They can really go in and actually say what they want, and they'll most likely get it.
Right.
Yeah,
that was not that way before COVID.
Right, it was
COVID
not.
did that. Before COVID, it was you had to put in the most hours,
Right.
the longest. You
Right.
just took it from the employer.
Right.
And then, think about even from like shopping, right? Like Black Friday turned into Thanksgiving Friday to you're like, hey, when
It's
does
all
it
week
start?
now.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
it was
All
from time
month.
cutting the turkey to hitting the mall.
Right.
Yeah.
And
right.
then now, when COVID hit, it just broke all that and it went back to normal because it was just getting out of hands. Like, where do you stop?
Yeah.
'Cause my brother's in the mall and he's like, man, I got to leave here and go open up and be up 24 hours. Well, who's going to work at 3 in the morning?
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's made a change for the better.
Yeah, I think it has too, because again, when it comes to workforce, all it is a relationship. You have your employer and your employee. Both of the roles are very important for your company. And HR's job in the past has been to just hire, fire, and push the paper, But that's not the case in the past 10 years.
Right.
HR is now the strategic partner with operating your business and running your business in the background. So they are the liaison between the employee and the employer. So that's why it's crucial to have a HR department, a HR person in your company, because their sole job is to protect the organization and your important asset, which are the people. So that HR person stands in the gap between the employee and the employer to make sure that the employee has everything that they need and the employer is aware of the need and provide. Employers may have to develop their employees. Part of the problem is most companies and most employers are not developing their employees. So once before, and I say this was before the pandemic, especially before the pandemic, you had succession plans, but it's mostly for your leaders, for the company.
Right.
Now you're forced to have succession plans for your entire
For your front
organization.
line,
Because if Joe was to quit today, and Okay, so what does that mean? How does that look afterwards? Do you have somebody in place that can do Joe's job when he leaves? Because we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing a great number of people resigning. Beyonce is advocating for all of y'all, for all people to quit. You know, you're not gonna break my soul. So you having that this is real.
Right.
This is real. So your company still has to go on, live on. So what is the plan if you have someone resign today? You know, or even if they put in a 2-week notice, what's your plan afterwards? So it's having that conversation. It's not putting sole responsibility on your HR department, because let me tell you, a lot of HR professionals are resigning.
Their mental health
We're
is
stressed.
just-
Yes, we are stressed because the companies depend on us to come up with a recruitment plan, and a strategy to get Joe's job filled. Or if, depending on your company, if your company is growing, these new jobs that's coming in, who's going to work those?
Right.
But the thing is, here's the gotcha. A recruitment strategy is not solely HR's responsibility. It takes the management. It takes management team. It takes your finance team. Some benefits departments are separate from HR. It takes everybody to come up with a recruitment strategy on what will it take to get talent through the door. And so it's having those tough conversations and not just pointing the finger on whose fault it is. You know, it's having the conversation and coming up with a resolution on what can we do, creating a strategy, creating a succession plan. You know, having supervisors say, "Hey, if I have if someone in my team just so happened to resign, I know I already have somebody in place who can be promoted or who can make a move to that role temporarily until we find somebody." So it's having those things in place. But a lot of times we don't have that in place because we think of succession plan, we think about leadership,
Yeah.
who's going to run the business, you know. But all the legwork positions, we don't have a plan for those. So if you don't have one, it's probably best to get with your HR person and create one.
And you can probably get a grant to pay for it.
Right. Right.
Louisiana workforce training grants.
Right.
They're, you know, the big companies know about it and use it.
Yes.
Our smaller companies don't, and it's like that money can be used to train those people to have that succession plan for
Yes.
each level.
Yes.
And you want to continue to keep building people up.
Yes.
Because then that creates job growth and intercompany growth. So.
Well, I mean, think about it. You know, if you want your people to stay, you know, a lot of times when we talk about, you know, these certain roles, you know, first thing I ask, okay, who internally can you promote?
Right.
Who internally can you move? You know, because you want those people to stay.
Yeah, because a culture
know.
standpoint of it, if you don't have a good culture and you're not hiring from within, the first thing you're thinking is, why am I even wasting my time?
Your
I'm not gonna
culture,
move up.
I said this a lot, Quentin, your culture is your recruitment. You know, you don't have a good culture. You can have the best HR person, and from, you know, I have to say I'm pretty good. You can have me go out and talk to all these people and recruit, but if our culture is not there, then everything that I'm doing is pointless.
Right.
You know, your culture, and here's the trick about culture is, it's not one person's responsibility. Again, it takes your organization. So it takes the people that work there to create a culture. So it's from management all the way down. And so, again, who are you hiring? Who are the supervisors that you're hiring? Who are your exec team that you're hiring? You know, so if you want a good culture, you want a good environment, it's developing your people to make sure that that culture and that environment there, because ultimately that is your recruitment strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Lamont, man, it's been great. We'll sit up here and talk with you all day, man, picking your brain on just on your perspective from the workforce and the hiring and recruitment, retention, all around, man. It's just such a value to know you, man, and have you as a brother, as a friend, and a part of the Louisiana Catalyst Board. We thank you for everything you shared with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
And
indeed.
everything looks great. Like I said, they were working before I walked in, and I am definitely proud. I kind of feel bad because, as they mentioned, I am on the board, and a lot of the work, it's already done. We're getting it taken care of. So I thank y'all for holding down the front end.
Yes, indeed.
Well, your time will come. We'll need you. I know that. Don't worry. Yeah. But we appreciate you. Absolutely.
Thanks. Thank y'all for having me.
No doubt.